All right. Welcome to Bigger Truth Media. This is the Bigger Truth Podcast. I'm Scott McMahon, and I have Corey Allen with the Overton Report here. And I've been really excited about this. Corey he's an independent journalist in South Carolina. He covers political issues in South Carolina from a conservative perspective. He describes himself on his website as being, wanting to expose communism and leftism, progressivism, the isms there on the left. And I definitely relate to that. That's a big part of what drives me as well. And we found each other because we're both looking at how this is going on in different, he's looking at it in South Carolina. We actually have a mutual friend in Greenville and that introduced us to each other. And so here we are. And so Corey has looked into are you in Charleston? Is that right?
I'm right outside of Charleston in Dorchester County.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it's basically a suburb of Charleston, but for all intents and purposes, yeah, I work mainly out of Charleston.
Okay.
South Carolina.
Great. And but you're familiar with the whole state, and you cover political conservative Republican issues from statewide.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And your podcast is the Overton Report.
Yep.
And go ahead and give it to us now. I'll ask again at the end. How do people find you?
Sure. Big Patriot Radio is an online radio network. It's bigpatriotradio.com that a friend of mine started, and Michael Covert. And every single weeknight at 7 and 8 and 9 p.m., there is a different South Carolina-based conservative podcast or show. And we're working to get on AM and FM stations, but that's a whole nother story. But the best place to follow me and what I do, theovertonreport.substack.com, and on my Facebook. If you search Corey Allen, The Overton Report, I'll pop up. It's a blue check mark, and really that's
and you do a great job on your Substack, and that's part of the reason why I actually started on Substack too, because I was looking at yours and I thought, man, Corey's he's done that well. So and so Jason just chimed in. He says strangers become friends in the fight, and absolutely, we are fighting against crazy and within the Republican Party, and it's it's not just like spontaneous crazy. Last night I had a district chair from Arizona from LD 26 he was removed completely illegitimately by just a sham of a vote, and we talked about that. That was Forrest Woodwick, and experiencing the same kinds of stuff, this like character assassination, all this kind of stuff, and really abuse. And so let's get right into, and we've obviously seen the same thing in Michigan. I'm so glad that you're joining us live. Bring your comments, your questions. One of the fun things about this that I found in these podcasts, especially looking in other states, is we've got a Michigan audience that is they're kindred spirits with now this your South Carolina audience that's been fighting this too. So, and if you are part of the group that we're talking about and you think everything that we're saying is lies, welcome your comments too. Please be specific about what you think we're being untruthful about, because I know Corey and I both adhere to journalistic integrity, and we want to make sure that we are being truthful in everything that we do and say. So, we welcome your comments. You're welcome to engage in name calling, and that'll just prove us right. So, but please bring it on.
Name calling is definitely one of the favorite tactics down my way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ridicule all that. So how did you first discover that there was a problem with this?
So I'll say that I was kind of naive about a lot of this stuff, right? I was one of those people, 2018, 2019, who would watch national news on my TV and scream at the TV and, be angry and then just go to bed and do nothing, right? And then something happened. That's a story for another time in 2020 with all of the COVID stuff, and I got directly, actively involved, and I started quickly meeting people, um, people from all sides of the conservative movement. And what showed me that something very strange was happened as far as these groups that we're discussing go. Linwood moved from Georgia to Beaufort County, South Carolina, which is where I went to high school. I mean, that's where I grew up, right? Beaufort County. And like out of nowhere, after he told everybody not to vote in a Senate runoff, right? And began running for chair of the South Carolina Republican Party, and certain groups got got behind him, and I started to see the vitriol from those groups towards. I mean, if a 65-year-old woman in a walker had a question, that woman's life would be destroyed by these people. They would they would call her business, attack her, send email threats. How dare you question this or that? And a lot of conspiracy theory type stuff. Like Linwood, for example, one time took a picture a of a charter bus outside of a closed down Mexican restaurant in Beaufort County and said, "Oh, I saw this," so and then made some equivocation to sex trafficking, and it forced that business to literally shut down because
Wow.
of the phone calls and emails to this Mexican restaurant that was attached to. It was a high. They were. It was for a football team. It turns out, and they were getting gas, right? So just crazy things like that, and I was like, this is not what we got involved in this to do. We can't fix problems or find solutions if we see just massive conspiracy everywhere. And also we can't, there are some things that are legitimate. There are some things that legitimately happen that are bad and wrong, and we need to fix them. But if you call everything a spade, then you can't call spades spades. You know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what in the report that we published a couple weeks ago that I published, it was we talked about Jeff Davis and
Mm-hmm.
his wife Olga Lazinska
That's right.
and Yvonne Julian. And
Yes.
so when did they first come onto your radar? It was probably about that time because Jeff Davis he took over my SCGOP
That's
the week
right.
the week before, the week after the 2020 election, right?
It was yes, it was somewhere right in there. What happened was Presley Stutz, the this old Tea Party contingent from South Carolina from the 2014, 15, that era, a man named Presley Stutz, he created my SCGOP with Jeff Davis. And
So Jeff Davis was involved even then,
oh
early on.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
From 14.
Well, no, 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 no. My SCGOP came out of the Tea Party. So the Tea Party collapsed and kind of, whatever happened, happened. And then later on, when they created my SCGOP, they were basically using all the same email lists, all the same membership lists, that type of thing.
Okay.
And they created this my SCGOP. And then Presley passed away, uh, God rest his soul, from intubation after getting COVID, and whatever happened happened. And after he passed, Jeff Davis took over my SCGOP,
Mhm.
and so it was right in that time when Linwood was running. Jeff Davis and Presley were both pushing him very hard. Um, and I saw some things, and I tried to speak with Linwood multiple times, and he would always say, he would always have his people say, "Yep, we're going to schedule you for this date on this time." And then that date and time would come and they'd be like, "Well, never mind."
Mm.
But everybody else that was running for the chairmanship at that time were doing interviews with me.
Hmm.
So it was a very strange, bait and switch type thing that was going on.
Right.
And people would get, and at the same time, they were telling people, Jeff and Lynn were telling people that I just refused to interview him. You know what I mean? So on one end, they were doing this, on the other hand, they were doing that,
Right.
which I've found actually is basically their MO almost all the time.
Hmm.
Um,
So my SCGOP, they run these Rock the Red concert
yeah,
events.
yes.
Do they still, or is that
It's as far as I know, there won't be another one.
okay?
Not with them involved.
Interesting. So the Rock the Red is kind of, it's been described to me as kind of the CPAC of the South.
It
It's like
was.
a concert and big
Yeah.
speaking event and rally with all the big speakers. Mike Flynn was often involved and
hmm
in those, and it's kind of like the Reawaken tour or whatever with the America Project and Mike Flynn
Right.
and then other speakers as well. And so that's just, when was the last time they did it?
So the last one, I don't have a date, but I think it was sometime last year after they rescheduled it at least once or twice.
Right.
Um, but the one that really, and that one was just a complete flop. They didn't break even. They were trying to hold it at the same time that another actual GOP event was being held and tried to make it this big, you know, competition or
Mhm.
something, because that's what wins elections, apparently.
Right.
And so what really killed it was the one before this last one, a couple years ago.
Hmm.
They had Michael Flynn and he spoke and he left. And after that, some guy grabbed a microphone and said, Mike Flynn's a traitor, Donald Trump's a traitor, blah, blah, blah. And these two guys took him and took the mic out of his hand, put him in arm bars. And there's video of this. And then one of the people, his name's Chad Caton from Myrtle Beach. He runs a podcast and he runs a show. That's very, he was lock, stock, and barrel with my SCGOP until a very recent split. After this dude was in arm bars, he grabbed him and like body slammed him and did all these things. And then they got the my SCGOP run county chairs and county GOPs to write a letter claiming that this dude was Antifa. He was threatening to kill people. He had a manifesto where he's gonna, you know, there was a second guy that was blocking exits, and all of that turned out to not be true. This dude filed a lawsuit against the Rock the Red, Myrtle Beach GOP, Chad, and Tracy Beans is actually another one who she was an officer there in the
What
Myrtle Beach GOP.
was it? Tracy Beans? Where do I know that name from?
Uncover DC. She's got
Okay.
a large
Yeah.
following,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has since distanced herself from all of this pettiness.
So she
Um,
was involved with my SCGP, or
oh, yeah, very deeply.
okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. Um, Especially when she became an officer for Myrtle Beach. I can't remember if she was like the vice chair of the Myrtle Beach or the Horry County GOP or the
Yeah. So
second vice chair,
she does
something.
have a national following. She's been on
Oh, yeah.
lots of national media, Bryce C. Bannon, and I think
hmm
that's probably where I know her. Okay. Um, so
So that killed it. All the lawsuits and everything, and just the
it
insanity
just,
that
the
ensued.
funds dried up, and it
hmm
just gave it a little bit of a stench.
That's right.
And all right. Um, well, then that's probably a good thing, as far as reducing their influence.
Yes.
How many counties are run by disruptor groups? My SCGOP.
So so I put them in a couple of categories. There are some that have just absolute control. I think Anderson County, which Pickens County is adjacent to them. Uh, Myrtle Beach, after that whole thing happened, all those people were kicked out and resigned their offices. So new people came in. So they kind of lost their foothold there. Um, Greenville's the biggest one, and the thing is that Greenville is the biggest GOP in a state. So but then there's another section where they don't have necessarily control of all of the they don't have the chairmanship or anything like that, but they might have one office. Like they might have the state EC position, and they have enough people in there to keep business from getting done at all. Charleston's a good example of that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So probably, I would say probably 7 to 10 counties
Okay.
that they have absolute control over.
That's
Yeah,
what I thought there were like 5 or 6. So that's more. And that's out of there's 46. Is that right? Counties?
I think so. Yeah, 46.
46 counties in South Carolina. So, and the interesting thing about South Carolina is it's obviously a safe Republican. It's considered a safe Republican state. I mean, it's a pretty deep red state, especially it's a you can kind of bank on it for Trump, but they also have. I mean, this is where Lindsey Graham's from, and Tim Scott, and so you've got some legitimate rhinos that are representing the state, and so there's some real legitimacy to the complaint against rhinos. People that they talk like that they say the things that their constituents want to hear, but then their actions don't align with that, and so that's a real problem. But would you say that there are rhinos in the party itself? I mean, is that there's
Yeah, I think that I'm very careful when I use the term rhino.
Sure.
What I think that we have a real issue with is there are some people who will, let's say a Lindsey Graham fan, right? Who's in the party. They will back Lindsey Graham no matter what he does, no matter what he says, no matter what he thinks. And that kind of blinds them to conservative principles, right? And I think that's really the biggest problem that South Carolina has, is that so many people are loyal. So many people within the party are loyal to individuals with power rather than principles, the principles of the Republican Party. I think that's where a lot of our issues come from. And I think that there are some really legitimate qualms and issues that some of the more conservative people like myself have with some of the very moderate ones. Mm-hmm. This is a situation though where a group of power hungry people who are looking to fill their own pockets have jumped on that bandwagon in order to manipulate people who were frustrated with the way they saw things happening, and have guided them into just an untenable place, a place that will destroy the entire party. Mm-hmm. And these people, they don't realize it. I think so many of them just don't realize that the top group in my SCGOP and the people that you are dealing with in Michigan, so many people underneath them really just do not understand that they're being taken. They're being conned.
Right.
And I think that's what's happening here.
So how can you give me some examples of how that manifests? Like what does that look like? Like, especially in Charleston County, because that's something that we haven't, we can look at just for review here. Let me open up. All right. Can you see that?
I can. Let me enlarge my screen.
All right. And I'm just going to show just some visuals so that we can, whoops. Where did we go here? What am I doing? All right, here we go. Sorry. We've kind of gone through this. I've gone through this timeline before, but I think that this does kind of, as far as where everything fits in,
Mm.
Trump was elected in 2016, and beginning in 2017 is when people really started getting these operators started to establish roots within the Republican Party, and we see in what you talked about. So this is the period here when Jeff Davis started getting involved then with
Mm-hmm.
my SCGOP, right? And then we have the stolen election in 2020, which in South Carolina there wasn't as much direct evidence of that, right? So there probably wasn't quite so much energy,
There's a massive fervor from this group about it, regardless of the results.
right?
Still to this day, these groups, when they're vetting a candidate who's going to be running in a primary, even and I just got off the phone with a candidate who's running for Congress today,
Hmm.
who met with some of these people today,
Hmm.
and the very first question they asked him was, would you have certified the 2020 election? I mean, here
Right,
we are 4 years later with a new election, and that's still the very first thing
right.
they pretend that they care about.
Right, and it didn't have, there probably there may have been some fraud, but there wasn't, nothing like Georgia, right?
Nothing, no, nothing like
Involved.
Georgia, and
So how does that necessarily affect South Carolina? Like that's cognitive dissonance there. They're making something. They're making a really a molehill into a mountain, and as far as South Carolina goes. Okay, so then they begin delegate recruitment, and this timeline really matches up here because my SCGOP really became all about delegate recruitment, right?
that's it. Yeah,
And indoctrination, and that's really what, because it probably wasn't that before Jeff Davis took over, right? It wasn't focused on the delegate recruitment so much,
not to my knowledge. Not to my
right?
knowledge, it wasn't. I know
But
that they
that's
went overdrive in 2021 because
right.
that's when we do our precinct reorganization.
Okay.
Is in the
Yeah.
off years after every 2 years.
And when you go to the website now, that's what it's about. We'll go there in a minute. So, and that's the front and center is all about um, recruiting delegates in order to take over the rhinos and get rid of the rhinos. So then in that reorg, that's the reorg is what you call like when the party, the executive committees and everything are reelected or
That's
elected,
right. That's
so that
right.
you call that the reorg. And so that happened starting 21, and that's when Jeff Davis first took power and he became county chair in Greenville County. Did
CEC. Oh yeah, county chair first. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and in 2021, and then in 23 he became you said the SEC or CEC,
The state, yeah, the state EC.
the state EC. So that's the executive committee for the state,
Right.
and he got elected onto that in 23. So it's kind of a promotion, but then the state EC actually banned him because he was suing so many other Republicans, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we start seeing with the rotten fruit and everything here, convention chaos. Is certainly I've seen examples of that in Greenville County.
Well, I
And is
have
that
something to tell you about this last reorg.
okay?
Uh,
Great.
that was very interesting. So
Uh-huh.
I was actually the only independent journalist allowed to cover the reorg, right? So there was, a couple of state media people around me, and I think maybe somebody from Breitbart or something. But I was the only like local independent journalist allowed to go there, and I
And
was
when
up on.
when was this in 23?
This was mm, May?
Okay,
No, yeah, somewhere in there.
it was in the summer of 23.
April, May, yeah, spring to
Okay,
summer.
spring summer. Okay.
Um, and the Charleston delegation, they were going, so everybody was going to vote, right, for their people. So what they do in order to vote for the larger counties, some counties have like 15 delegates, so they all just write it there, stand in their chair. The larger counties like Charleston and Greenville, they get up, stand in a line, and write the thing down on a colored piece of paper, hand it to the chair, because the county chairs are elected prior to the state convention. And both times that they went to vote, they had that they went to vote for chair. because you vote. We didn't have a thing. Somebody drops out, and now there are only 2 people running rather than 3, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Greenville County sent a delegate into the Charleston line to vote there in an attempt to make them have too many votes so that it would look like there was some fraud going on.
Mm.
It was caught. Um, I'm
Wow.
interviewing the woman who actually caught them the second time because they had to vote. They had to vote for the same thing twice because they were like, "Wait, somebody voted that wasn't supposed to. What's going on here?" So they had to do it again. That
So they
person tried to get in
intentionally
line again.
voted multiple times.
Well, they voted. So they got into the wrong county line,
Okay.
voted in that county rather than their own. Right? They were supposed to be voting in Greenville County,
Yeah.
which is where all this stuff was happening.
Right.
Greenville County.
Yeah.
They got into the Charleston line, voted there. When the Charleston delegation realized that there was something wrong, they had one too many votes. They said, okay, well, we're going to throw that out. We're going to have our county vote again for a second time. A Greenville person got up and tried to get in line again, was caught, and played dumb. Oh, I didn't know. You don't know the difference between Greenville County, which is 4.5 hours away from Charleston County. You don't
Right.
know. Like,
Yeah.
we're the only ones that are getting up to revote.
Right.
Why are you in this line again? So that was
Wow.
obviously an intentional thing so that because the people in Charleston County who had lost, who were my SCGOP folks, they had lost the county reorg, the county election, and they were trying to set a level to claim fraud, right?
Mhm.
That's what was going on there.
Wow. Wow. So they wanted there to be fraud just so that they could have that victim narrative to promote.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Michiganders would definitely say, I think we've heard something like that before. That victim narrative, it is, I mean, this is the tactics of the left. I mean, this is not the way that Republicans operate. And that's really underhanded and very strange. So let's see here. Let's go back to this real quick. So, to get back down to, let me get all the way down to, if you have not read this story yet, there is so much here. It's on biggertruth.substack.com. It's the research into 5 states. And this is really a major report. So here we at South Carolina. This is Jeff Davis. I grabbed this from a screenshot, and
That's not very flattering.
It's not very flattering, but this was taken in a moment of a county meeting when he had just brought up, he was calling a gentleman, I forget his name, and you might know his name. But he's an older man that's been a part of the party for a long time. He's kind of a parliamentarian, and Jeff Davis was just chastising. I mean, he's just calling him a rhino and just said rhino, rhino. And that's where this was. And he's saying, and what this guy did is he said, I moved to censure you. Like it's such courage in this meeting. He says, you need to be censured because of your behavior right now.
Was it Chad Connolly? Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay. I'm not sure then.
No, I would recognize the name, but I don't think that's it.
Okay.
And so he actually came up and he says, well, if you're going to do that, come on up here and be a man. Like it was crazy. And then so he came up and he said, okay, so I moved to censure you. And then people were like yelling at him, and he says, okay, I'm sorry. I'll try to keep it to the motion. And, it was such a hard, you could just, I felt so bad for him. You just feel the trauma for him.
It was like a struggle session. Yeah.
Exactly. And
How dare you challenge me?
That's right. And to do that, like in front of the whole county. And, that's when I said, okay, I definitely need to cover this. This is not,
I'm telling you, Jeff Davis is a very interesting character.
Right.
He really is. I mean, just all the bad traits you can think of, and you put them in a pot, stir it up, and I
That's right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's insane.
Well, so he was convicted of $950,000 in embezzlement in Georgia in
Mhm.
2000, between 2012 and 14.
So
Right.
I want to correct that. He was found. So I don't know if convicted is the proper term when we're
Okay.
talking about tort issues. Um, he was found by the judge to have done this unequivocally, 100%, defrauded his friend and a and he was supposed to be friends. They were like family friends of at least $950,000.
Right.
Uh, he was telling them they were investing in something, but really he was paying off creditors and loans.
Yeah. The way that I read it is he borrowed. They thought that he was giving he gave them they gave him $1 million to invest in what he said was a local bank
Mm-hmm.
stock. And then instead of buying that stock, he took out a loan for $5 million. He used his collateral to take out a loan for $5 million.
Right.
And so just a mess. Like how could how could you do that
Mm-hmm.
for a client, let alone a friend? So that's just kind of that says something to his character. But this right here kind of stood out. This was from an email that they sent out, and he says, "We say to people all the time, trust no one." And
Mm-hmm.
that is a really common theme. They really want to put in people's minds that they cannot trust. And it even says here, you know, for goodness sake, don't trust the folks that cloak themselves in a blanket of "I'm a better Christian than you are." But
I'm
that's what
telling
they
you,
say all the time.
all the
This
time.
is such projection because they're constantly using scripture. They're always talking about how everybody that's not in their group is demonic, and here they are saying,
He knows that he's doing that. I mean,
right,
let me be clear. Like, it's whenever some new evidence comes out about him,
mhm,
he specifically accuses somebody else of that exact same thing, and then says, "Don't trust anyone."
right,
And it's very purposeful. At
sure,
least in his case, he knows exactly
right.
what he's doing.
They've done that. They've done that some with me too. They
Oh
did
yeah.
everything they could to try to discredit me. I saw some of the messages. I didn't pay too much attention because I was actually getting that from all four states at once. But
Yeah.
um,
Wait. Oh, my SCGOP did on you? They
um,
sent out some stuff.
yeah, I did see some messages from that were internal, like on their Telegram channel or whatever, that they were talking
Oh,
about me. So
they're gonna be
uh,
mad at you for talking to me. And then at the same time, he pretends like he's like, I've tried to call Corey and have a discussion with him. It's like, no, you didn't. You published hit pieces on me,
right,
and then like you called me two years ago one time. Like
mhm,
you've never tried to just. He's just a liar. It's
right,
so despicable.
yeah.
Just bad
Uh,
people.
Yep. And then this is just as in your face as it gets. Learn their tricks, rules for radicals. Picture Saul Alinsky in the cover of his book. And they were, this is promoting kind of a class that they were doing or something, saying,
Hmm.
break the cycle, learn their tricks. It's as in your face as it gets. And we've seen the same thing in Arizona and elsewhere.
You have
Uh,
somebody teaching a class about it, right?
In Arizona,
In Arizona.
that Yale Wishnick is actually he claims that he took classes with Saul Alinsky in the 70s, and and I've got screenshots from emails where he was promoting classes on
Mm,
rules for radicals for Republicans. But that's exactly what this article is about here. you know,
right.
and then this kind of this was a Telegram chat where Jeff Davis himself says, sad for them. They're no longer part of the MAGA America First South Carolina Patriot movement. Will no longer be distracted by them. Unless, of course, they go through your conflict resolution committee. And
Hmm.
I don't think any of their egos will permit that. So, that is struggle session. If they go through your conflict resolution committee and are reformed to the right way of thinking, then of course, yeah, we'll let them back in. um it's just it's completely in your grill here. um Trump 24 says, it's my understanding that South Carolina has a part-time legislature. Based on that, do these disruptor groups essentially have more power or perceived power than almost the legislature, or no impact really? Does that
that play a role? So that's a, I mean, that's a good question. The GOP groups meet year round. The county groups, they do meet year round.
Mhm.
I think that the fact, I don't think that there's a direct link between the two, but I would say that because there's a part-time legislature, there's about 8 months out of the year where these groups can plot and plan without having to uh, do what most states do, where the GOP groups are pushing Republican bills and trying to make them law. There's almost none of that happens within the GOP groups. They focus all of their time on getting candidates, getting delegates, and attacking people instead of. I think that that's probably the only thing there.
Mhm.
They do have a lot of power. I don't know how it compares
Right.
to other places, but
Sure.
they can blacklist
What's
you quick.
and they do understand. I mean, that so the disruptor groups definitely are not on the majority in the state, and they have. And what's the name of the state chair?
State chair is Drew McKissick, and
That's
actually he's the
right.
vice chair for the national
Right.
uh, Republican committee. So,
I actually spoke with somebody today that talked recently with McKissick about what's going on there,
mm,
and he seems to understand. The person I talked to is fighting this in another state, and so they were talking about the disruptors specifically.
mm-hmm.
They both had read my last story, and this person said that Drew McKissick knows what's going on there, and that these people are, are pretty nasty and hard to work with, but they don't have the numbers to be a threat, at least not yet.
See, well, that's something I entirely disagree with. That there there are legitimate issues with Drew McKissick and some of the things he's done, and that's why these groups have been able, or this group in particular has been able to be effective,
Mm,
because there are some legitimate concerns with McKissick. Um, we
sure.
don't have to get into all that right now,
Yeah, right.
like
Well,
I
and
said, there are legit things, legit
sure,
problems.
sure.
So
And the reality is that there is nobody that's perfect, and
of course.
that's one of the big problems with all of this is this application of purity tests. And if you're not 100% with me, you're my enemy.
Hmm.
And so,
And all your flaws, like you could have all the flaws in the world, but as long as you're agreeing with me right now, you're invincible. But the moment you step out of line, now I'm going to destroy you. Like
right,
that's how they work. So the purity test they only apply to the people when it suits them,
sure,
right?
sure,
That's
exactly. Yeah,
really
it's
the.
rules for thee, but not for me. We see that all the time. So, um, Lauren says, I remember back in the day when I still followed Linwood and he was going after Drew McKissick. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and I think a lot of us followed Linwood because we would just, and a lot of these people because we were upset about what we are seeing, especially, here in Michigan and Georgia and Arizona, the states where there was the most fraud. We were feeling really powerless to do
Yeah,
anything about this. And we knew that this was taken away from us. And um, yeah, it's just it's all kind of like the crushing of heroes, and to a certain extent, that finding out that there's some, it's more than just personality flaws. That there likely is something actually nefarious. Lauren continues. That's why I started realizing Lynn was not safe to follow, which is
yeah,
absolutely right.
absolutely. That.
Yep.
Whew.
And yeah, it's the way that the methods are important, and especially to Republicans, methods need to matter to us. And the notion of by any means necessary, that is a Marxist fundamental philosophy, that
Yeah,
the ends justify the means. And I think that we need to tread very carefully with that. Um,
and it's
so,
utilitarian, and that goes directly against everything we're supposed to believe in, which is individualism.
Mm.
You can't be both. You can't say by any means necessary and believe in each individual's fundamental right to be free. You can't
Yeah,
do both things.
that's right. Yeah.
So,
So, I want to talk just a little bit more about Jeff Davis and then move
sure.
on to Keith Blanford. So, Jeff Davis, one of the things that he's done, he's an attorney, and he has filed these class action lawsuits against other Republicans,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes 10, 20, 30
At
at
a
a time.
time. Yeah.
And I was told that right around the time, so the day that I published this story, the day before actually, that night I sent him a text message. I got his phone number and I sent Jeff Davis a text message telling him what the story was going to be about and asking him if he had any comment. And
Right.
he got that right after a meeting, and he had not been to a meeting at all. He hadn't been to, like, they have weekly coffee meetings or whatever, coffee
Mm-hmm.
and donuts or biscuits and gravy. I don't know what they do. And at the county HQ, and talk about the problems in the world and how they're not going to solve them. And
Right.
then and
How they can make more.
right. And they did not, he had not been to anything in 2 weeks. Nobody had seen him. And
Right.
at that meeting, apparently he was very despondent and quiet, which is very unlike him. He wants to be center of attention. He was kind of just very quiet and not involved. And then after that meeting, and I think in that week, he had actually been notified by a judge that he got a judgment against him in one of the class action lawsuits, that he had to, the case was dismissed that he was bringing against all these other Republicans, and he was liable for all of their attorney fees, for like 20 defendants' attorney fees. Is that,
Yeah.
did I get that right? Or roughly?
Oh no, I think you started breaking up right there. But yeah, he was so that's what I've heard the same thing. I haven't seen the paperwork yet, but yeah, that's kind of that's the thing about Jeff. I mean, he's sued well over 140, 150, I hear over 160 people in South Carolina, and uh every one of them is a Republican, not a single Democrat. You'd think that if you were, a Republican fighting against corruption, you'd at least find one Democrat who's guilty of it in
Mhm.
our state. I know plenty of them, you know, but every single person that he ever has filed lawsuits against are Republicans. That's why they kicked him out of the state EC position and don't allow him to come to their state meetings anymore, is because too many people in that room he has sued.
Right.
There's an entire rule in the South Carolina Republican Party that passed overwhelmingly that says you can't file lawsuits against people in their official capacity within the party and still retain, be a member in good standing,
Mhm.
which makes sense.
Sure. I mean, that's part of decorum. If you've got a problem with somebody, you shouldn't be taking them to court right away. You should try to settle that problem.
Yeah.
And if you're within the party, just like if you've got, you should really seek a way of working things out. So, um, Dakota says hashtag infiltration instead of invasion. And yeah, I mean, that these groups have done more harm to the Republican Party than the Democrats ever could from outside. And so, so I don't know where Jeff Davis stands for now, but it sounds like he's had a pretty no good, very bad month or so.
Yeah, seems like he's been getting smacked around a little bit.
Right. So tell me about, let me just bring up a picture that I posted this on. Um, I think it's this one. Yeah. So I posted this on, I found this from 2021 as I was doing research before today's show. And this right here is Keith Blanford from South Carolina. He was running for Secretary of State
Mm-hmm.
in 2022, and this is at the Arizona audit. Well, this is Wendy Rogers, and in Arizona, who just 2 weeks ago she sponsored a bill that would have allowed counties, which are larger than the districts. It would have allowed counties to determine who's going to be delegates for the districts. So it just completely overruling and overriding those junior districts. And fortunately, that failed. But she is a disruptor there in Arizona. And here we have them meeting. And that Arizona audit was really in my opinion, and just from everything that I've seen, that was a major networking event for the disruptors. Mike Labadie and Christina Cromwell were there. They probably met. I think that they were there at that same time. That picture was, at least that tweet was in July. It's very likely that they were there in the same time. I think it was June, July when Christina Cromwell and Mike Labadie were out there from Michigan. But the Secretary of State candidates all met out there, and they probably met later too, because gentleman who goes by the nickname of 107, he organized these kind of meetings with different Secretary of State candidates, and so they would have met through that as well. So Christina Cromwell, I'm certain, had a relationship of sorts with Keith, and probably still does with Keith Blandford. Right. And it's very likely that he met Mike Labadie as well. So speculative, but I think that there's a lot of evidence that suggests that that's a healthy speculation, or a reasoned one. Melanie says bankrupt and destroy Republicans individually equals damage party, not accomplishing anything. And that's what we're looking at. So tell me a little bit more about Keith Blandford, and how he took control over, because he is the chair in Charleston County. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
No. Keith does not hold a position in the Charleston Republican Party. So Keith actually, during the tenure of the previous chairman of the Charleston County Republican Party, some outburst happened, and some I'm going to say some threats were made, and that led to Keith being voted. A vote took place, and Keith is no longer allowed at those meetings. His wife, though, who's also named Olga, like Jeff Davis's wife, she still goes to those meetings. And Keith is an interesting character. He ran against Lindsey Graham a long time ago. He's always running for something, right? And most recently, like you said, it was Secretary of State, and now he's actually going to run against Lindsey Graham again. He's announced. That's 4 years away. So, but Keith really came to prominence during the time between the election happening, the 2020 election happening, and then leading up to January 6th and after January 6th. And his Telegram, which has now been made private, but his Telegram channel and a lot of the things that he would write, his main thing was to imply that, I'm in Mar-a-Lago meeting with Donald Trump, and, this is all for show. It's all a game. Don't worry. We're going to take it back over. White hats or this, this big like military cosplay that a revolution is imminent, right? And he's very charismatic, right? So he was able to get a lot of people to believe in that type of thing. He's teamed up with Davis and MySC GOP, and they're doing the exact same types of things down here. They'll have meetings Republican meetings where, if they don't know that you're one of their crew and you're not pure enough, you're not going to be allowed in, those types of things. And they'll kind of plan how to best keep business from happening at the next meeting. The meetings that he can't go to, but like I said, his wife, Olga Blandford, does go to. But yeah, he'll always.
So both Olga, or both Keith Blandford and Jeff Davis have wives named Olga, and Jeff Davis's wife is from Poland, and she was born in Poland, and
Both
and
former USSR.
yeah, that was during the USSR that she was there. So
Yeah.
that is very strange. So and then this Olga Blandford's Olga, she's actually she grew up in the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So
That's
she's
right.
Russian. Okay. So we got Olga
And
and Olga.
she actually ran on Jeff Davis's slate when he was trying to run for SCGOP chair as the, I think, second vice chair. It could be third. I can't quite recall. But she was on his slate. So, there's no doubt about their working very closely together. But it's all very militaristic and revolution oriented talk
Mm,
all the time. Very concerning, even going so far as to talk about South Carolina could make a treaty with Russia and go around the United States. Like even going so far as to argue on for that, which is
like seceding from the Union. South Carolina seceded from the Union.
so I don't know if that would make you secede, but it is unconstitutional for a state to sign treaties with a foreign nation. Like that is very clear in the Constitution. So I don't know if but he's very pro Russia. Extremely pro Russia. With the Russia Ukraine thing, I think most or many of us are kind of like, it's just not ours. Like that's not our,
Right.
we've got millions of people coming across the border. We've got election issues. We've got just, inflation problems. Let's kind of leave that alone. But
Right.
no, it's very,
So
as
he's
a matter
pro Putin.
uh, to the extent that and all of the people that they have surrounded themselves with as well. There's a book that's called the New Dictator or the 21st Century Dictator or something like that. And the South Carolina or the Charleston County Republican Party has a book club that they do every Thursday, or I think 2 Thursdays a month. And the guy who runs it, he puts up, he goes and he buys boards that have the covers of the books that they're going to read. There'll be like 4 books that you can read, and we'll come and have a discussion about this and that, and they all have a theme or whatever. So this book, it was written in like 2014 or 2015, well before this, and it's about Putin, and he put it up. He had it on an easel along with like 1984 and Brave New World and things like that, just on these easels, right, at the GOP meeting. And Keith's people and like Olga and these people flipped out. I mean, they went totally ape, right? And demanded that all of those book covers be completely taken out and not shown. 1984, Brave New World, and this book about Putin. Those
Really?
were the ones they didn't want anybody to see.
So these are anti-communist books, like showing the realities of communism, and he does not want people to see that.
And it all
This is
started
the reason.
because somebody said something bad about, or it was it's like an award-winning not book biography of Vladimir Putin. It's not,
Wow. And this is somebody that wants to run for, he ran for Secretary of State, he wants to run for U.S. Senate as a Republican.
That's right.
That's crazy. Dakota says an effective county party has the ability to drive positive impact for constituents. When a county party is rendered ineffective through disruption, the people suffer. They become reliant on a dysfunctional propaganda machine intent on controlling the narrative and are unable to build bridges with legislators to drive conservative impact. The people deserve better. And that is, I think that's really well put. The what we've seen here in South Carolina is when they do have power, like in Greenville, they just drive out everybody that disagrees with them. Dissent is absolutely not tolerated, and so we've got. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable that you've got a Republican there in Charleston that is running for major office who does not like books that show the realities of communism. I mean, that's just over the top. But But then they actually live this out in by driving dissent out of the party. There are which there is a county where there's two parties, right, or it's split. And
Lexington.
yeah,
And, funny story, I'll tell it very quickly about Lexington. So, the Lexington County Republican Party, uh, this woman, she ran a fake Women for Trump organization that was not connected with Women for Trump at all. Okay. And uh, she had gone around. I'm surprised I'm even going to say this. Basically, she went around telling people that I am actually a transsexual and a transvestite, and I wear women's clothes, and she has proof, and she has video, and she's gonna show it to everybody, and it just, and she is like my SCGOP's like second in command. Her name's Pam Godwin. Jeff Davis, my SCGOP, they've written about her numerous times, and she was elected to the chairmanship of Lexington County. Now, I was telling people, like, this isn't true. I'm offering $5,000 to anyone who can show me any picture of me ever in women's clothes. Like, what is this woman thinking? It's just insane. And no, still, I mean, I've still got the $5,000. I mean, I'm waiting. But so she got elected, and then she started, lo and behold, doing the exact same thing to multiple people in the party. When she became chair and somebody had a question or would disagree or do this or that, look, Lauren Turner said, "Oh, Pam." She knows. She would start spreading rumors about that person. And
right.
she did it to somebody that was running for SCGOP chair, Zoe Warren, good guy, and somebody who defended her vehemently when she was doing this to me. And that's when she was removed by the ECs, by the delegates. They had a rule in the Lexington County Republican Party that 2/3 of the delegates sign, like precinct presidents, etc., in county ECs, sign a petition, and an officer can be removed. She didn't like that. She said, "Nope, we're not. I'm not. That rule doesn't apply to me." And as a matter of fact,
By
we
her own, yeah,
the
right.
legislative committee, now the committee here, all the officers, we are voting to remove and suspend the vice chair, the third vice chair, the state, or no, the state EC was on her side, but we're removing these officers, actually, is what we're doing. So it turned into this huge thing, and then eventually it had to make its way to the state EC, and they officially removed her for the second time, but she still calls herself the chair of the official Lexington County Republican Party,
Right.
as opposed to just the Lexington County Republican. It is a hilarious situation, and these are the types of people, overly emotional, extremely questionable when it comes to their principles and their stability. These are the types that are perfect for the leaders like Jeff Davis to get a hold of and use them as, I don't know, flying monkeys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the type. That's the type.
Right.
These people. It's
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah. So we definitely have a couple of Pams in Michigan. Yep. And one of them is, in Sabrina's case, everyone is a child trafficker.
Mm,
But it's the
mm-hmm.
same exact pattern.
Well, that's what Lynn Wood accused Drew McKissick of during the
Right.
SCGOP chairman race. He accused him of that.
Yeah.
It's
And
crazy.
this is Sabrina Pritchett Evans, she's behind a split in the Kalamazoo County here. So we have two Kalamazoo County parties, and we have for several months. And yeah, we have a mirror situation, and also, Trump said 24 says, just like Karamo did. That's exactly, for 2 months we had two state parties because
Really?
yeah, so she was removed on January 6th, but she refused to acknowledge it. She said it was illegitimate. She says that she was the official state chair. She refused to turn over the website. She still hasn't turned over the website, even after the court order. She refused to turn over access to the bank account. So we elected a new chair and Pete Hoekstra on January 20th. It wasn't until until the very end of March, right before the state convention, the state caucus, when a judge finally issued a temporary injunction that she may no longer call herself the chair, and she had to surrender, control over everything. But she's
That
still, it's still even on her Twitter that it links to the migop.org website. So
these types of people, they cling to whatever title they think will grant them respect and power.
mm,
It's interesting that you mentioned the website and social media thing, because that has been a very big problem here. Anytime a new non-my SCGOP group wins the election, wins the reorg, chairmanships, etc., they never get the website, and they never get the social media accounts or anything. It's a very big problem here.
right, because it's control. Really what that is control over the mailing lists and control over access to the delegates, which
Mm-hmm.
gives them narrative control. And just like the left, they want complete control over the narrative. That's part of how they control people's minds by controlling access to information. So
I just saw at Trump 24, and I just wanted to, on the comments, and I just wanted to say something. Like, I don't know about you. I think from, we've had a couple of conversations, but staunch Trump supporter, staunch conservative, I'm very conservative Republican. I it's such a shame, because so many of the things that these groups state that they believe in, I also believe in.
mhm.
It's just the main issue here is that these groups are not, their actions prove that they really don't believe in those things and
Mhm.
do not care about actually getting, for example, Trump in office or getting conservatives in office. It's all to them about loyalty to me, the individual. And if you slight me, I will destroy you, no matter if whether or not you believe in 100% of the things that I believe in. I will destroy you because you questioned my power or my rule. That's what all of this, I think, is about.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, it's about creating as many problems as they can in this critical election cycle to make it harder and harder for Trump to win. When you look at the leaders of the organization, they claim that they love and support Trump until Trump becomes a threat to them and their power in any way. And I mean that's what happened here. They all started instantly as soon as Trump endorsed Pete Hoekstra, the new chair, and not Cramo. They all came out and they were talking about how Trump always makes terrible endorsements, and you can't
Mm.
believe him. And they even claimed that he didn't actually write it, like somebody else wrote it. And
Yeah.
crazy,
Well,
crazy. So
I question some of his endorsements, or at least the wisdom in some of them. But we have, that's neither here nor there.
sure,
Somebody can endorse whoever they
sure.
want to. That's their prerogative. But things like like with Jeff Davis. Jeff Davis was a neighbor of Linwood before
Mhm.
Linwood moved from Georgia to Florida. Jeff Davis was a lawyer in Georgia. Jeff Davis's wife Olga
They were literally
has
neighbors, like in the same
same
neighborhoods.
neighborhood. Yes.
Wow.
Uh,
So they knew
Je-
each other before they got here.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Um, Olga Lisenska is a Polish citizen. She has chosen. She's married to an American. She has chosen not to be an American citizen. She has chosen that, and continuously inserts herself into only Republican politics. Only. So she goes to the conventions and she demands that people do this. She was yelling "baby killer" at Moms for Liberty members uh, at the last South Carolina State Convention, because they had supported the heartbeat bill here, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And this is pre Roe v. Wade being overturned, whatever.
Right.
So, like, she was questioning Adam Morgan, who is a conservative member of the Freedom Caucus who's running for Congress in the upstate. They have personal issues with Adam Morgan. So they're picking William Timmons over him, which is weird. But she's a non-citizen who is in control of GOP, of the Greenville County Republican Party's uh, funds and treasury, etc. She has no stake in this, but she's basically like second in command to Jeff Davis. And also she donated money to Bernie Sanders, but wants you to believe that she's MAGA. She spouts off uh, Bible verses, but has a shrine to Buddha where she does her yoga, like right there in pictures on her own Instagram.
Wow.
So, you know, we
Wow.
have this duality, right? It's like
Mhm.
she's exactly like Jeff Davis. Yvonne Julian, the chair of the Greenville County Republican Party, a lifelong Democrat, donated to Hillary Clinton.
Mhm. Yep, and not only that, she was the chair for like 10 years of what was it called? It's the African American Success Foundation or the Black Success something like that.
Down in Florida, I
Florida.
believe it was.
That it was giving, college scholarships only to black students, and it was and
And push
very,
DEI.
yeah, very, very much DEI themes throughout. I've read a lot of the newsletters. It's DEI type for 10 years that she's been running this.
But
And
now all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe, oh, you had a come to God moment, an epiphany in the past, what, 2 years, 3 years. And because of that, you're supposed to be in charge of everything. No, okay. I'm not saying that a Democrat or a far leftist can't see the error of their ways and become, a Republican or start down the journey towards conservatism. We all started somewhere.
yeah,
But you don't get to run the show.
right.
You're in kindergarten.
Right,
Sit
and not
down.
only that, and we're going to try to wrap up here in just a
Sure.
minute, but not only that, we they're trying to they're going to such a radical extreme, like calling people baby killers because they're putting forward a really compromise oriented bill, compromise for now oriented bill that would limit rather than banning all abortion outright, which, as we've seen in Alabama, is actually leading deep red Alabama to elect Democrats in the House, partly in response to them banning abortion outright, and because that's something that alienates a lot of people in the middle. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
That's true.
so they're calling all, they're just taking a very radical far right, not just on abortion, but I think you told me about some Guardian article where Yvonne Julian was like just really acting like a lunatic in front of them, like
Absolute lunatic.
an
And Jeff
absolute
Davis.
far. Yeah, so they're just extreme far right. And they're trying to represent the Republican Party in the most lunatic far right light as they possibly can, which is a big part of what they're trying to do, to move the party as far to the right as they can. This is a common theme in every state. Just as it worked really well in the Democrat Party, they've done that, and now there is no moderate Democrat. There are no moderate and America loving truly patriotic Democrat elected officials
Yeah.
just about on any level anymore because of how far left they've gone, and now they're trying to do the same thing with the Republican Party. So
I think
uh,
they're pushing for a backlash. That's what I think. They're trying to push so that the Overton window
mhm,
shifts
sure.
further to the left. That's what I believe they're trying to
Exactly.
do.
Yeah, and it very obviously too. That I think that's a good point. It very obviously also makes the Republican Party not a viable electoral alternative for people
Mm-hmm.
that are caught in the middle. Just a couple more comments. Dakota says that Trump is a convenience for the disruptors. Do they donate to his campaign? No. Do they sell his signs, t-shirts, hats, etc.? Yes. Does that money go to his campaign? Nope. Instead, they donate to socialist Bernie Sanders and Democrats. Make it make sense.
That's
Trump,
right.
yeah. Didn't Jeff and Trump 24 says, didn't Jeff and Olga have some legal issues funding for school vouchers? That the simple answer is yes, and that also happens to be their biggest political issue
Mm,
is school choice, but only in such a way that it benefits their nonprofit
that's
financially.
right. That's right.
Dakota says grifters profiting off the Trump brand, and 1,800 grifters. And here we are. So, people are jumping straight into leadership from being and this is to your earlier point, from being Democrats
Mhm.
and not really having any experience in the Republican Party, and and never having gotten a Republican elected or run for office themselves, and all of a sudden here they are running the show,
Yep.
and it's cray cray. So, this is really great. I really appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last words?
Absolutely. I want to tell people, look up Crystal Matthews. It's Krystle, Crystal Matthews, who ran against Tim Scott in the last Senate campaign and ran against Jordan Pace. She was an incumbent state legislature. She was talking to an activist who was arrested for making threats against to kill political individuals, elected officials, and their families. She was talking to him on a jail phone and discussing how she had been taught that we need to bring sleepers into the Republican Party in order to cause havoc and wreak havoc. That
Wow.
just it was national news. Look that up. This I believe is the other side of that coin. Stacey Abrams created built her second office in Charleston, South Carolina, and put a bunch of sleepers and worked to that goal. And I believe that this is that. That's what
Wow.
I believe. So
Wow.
look
Interesting.
that up.
Will do. Corey, thank you so much for coming on. And I think
Thank
you
you.
also, please like and subscribe. And we've got more tomorrow morning. I'm going to do just a solo podcast where I'm sharing for Good Friday, sharing my testimony. I've been
Awesome.
accused of being a satanic, demon worshiping, black magic practicing, new age fake Christian. So this is just a great opportunity for me to actually tell the story of how Jesus just completely changed my heart. And
That'll be a good show.
yeah,
I'll definitely watch that. I'm a recovered opiate addict, man, and finding God was literally saved my life. I mean, not not metaphorically,
yeah,
quite literally saved my life. So
praise the Lord. That's
thank you
amazing.
for that.
Yeah. Well, all right, Corey, brother, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.